Estonia might be a country that you've only heard about on the Eurovision Song Contest, if you watch the Eurovision Song Contest. But the reality is that Estonia is a pioneering country in many fields. Some might even call it the Silicon Valley of Europe. Companies like Skype and TransferWise were created in Estonia. This is particularly surprising given that just 30 years ago, Estonia was a part of the Soviet Union. In fact, geographically, Estonia's situation is far from being ideal. Their weather is pretty terrible, and in the winter they have as little as 3 hours of daylight every day. Plus, they also have an ongoing demographic crisis that they are really struggling to solve. Further, unlike most countries, the female population of Estonia is markedly higher than the male population. This means that people find it harder to find a partner and have children. This is why every year Estonia maintains a course of population reduction. And yet, despite all of this, Estonia is the most technologically advanced nation in all of Europe. In fact, it is the only country in Europe where access to the internet is recognized in the constitution. But what really makes Estonia get into our country's Hall of Fame is its e-residency. This means that a person, no matter where they are from, can simply fill out a form and become a virtual citizen of Estonia. But the question you might have in your mind right now is, but what does that really mean? Today, we are going to explain this to you in this video, but first, let's have a quick look at the history of Estonia.
The first victims of Vladimir Putin.
In 1991, Estonia got its independence from the Soviet Union. Yes, other countries like Belarus and Ukraine got their independence at around the same time. But in those countries, the new political establishment had a lot of influence from the old communist elite. Estonia was different. Their first democratic prime minister, Mart Laar, formed a cabinet with an average age of just 30 years old. These were young people with new ideas who had no debt to the old Soviet Guard. And this is how Estonia opened their market to the international economy. They adopted a capitalist system and a fairly unique political system that would become well known for its minimalism. In fact, it is this word, minimalism, that really describes Estonia better than any other. Even their flag is minimalist and is simply a representation of their traditional landscape. Even their taxation is minimalist, and they have a flat-rate tax system. This means that everyone in the country pays the same percentage of tax no matter how much they earn. In this case, in Estonia, the income tax is just 20%. With these policies, it's easy to see why Estonia attracted foreign investment, particularly from the Scandinavian countries. Nonetheless, this was still not enough for them to grow at the rate that they wanted. At the beginning of the 1990s, less than half of the population had a phone in their home. Further, the infrastructure, which was built during the Soviet era, was far from acceptable. As you can imagine, this is not a great setup for a country that is looking for economic development. Since the country had no money to invest in physical roads, they instead decided to invest in virtual roads, the country's telecommunications infrastructure. And just 15 years later, Estonia was the first country in the world to have an electronic voting system. But hold on for just a second, because all of these reforms didn't exactly come for free. During these 15 years of forward progress, the Russian minority, which used to rule the country, became increasingly politically isolated. This is why in 2007 the Kremlin under Vladimir Putin decided to act. And this is how the first cyber attack in history was organized. And yes, a cyber attack on a country that relied heavily on its digital infrastructure was a big problem. During the attack, Estonia lost its administration, which was so dramatic that even hospitals were not able to function. This is why, since that day, NATO has had its cybersecurity headquarters in Tallinn, the Estonian capital. But this was not the end of Estonia's problems.
The financial crisis.
2 years later, in 2009, the financial crisis struck Estonia hard. The country was particularly exposed because of all its foreign investment. All of a sudden, the country had no money. Plus, this was the time when they were supposed to adopt the euro as their currency. So even if they wanted to make the switch to the euro, they didn't have the funds to make that happen. So the government had two options. They could either cut their spending or they could raise taxes. Unlike other countries like Spain, Estonia took the first option. In a matter of months, the government fired over 10,000 workers. This was about a third of their entire staff. Politicians lowered their salaries and froze all state investments, which included many construction projects. All of these cuts caused the Estonian GDP to fall by 14% in that year. To make a comparison, in their worst year during the financial crisis, the US saw their GDP fall by 8%. Nonetheless, after going through a terrible 2009, Estonia saw its economy begin to improve almost immediately. Since they didn't raise their taxes and business policies remained very flexible, many of those who lost their jobs decided to start companies. So now let's have a look at their unemployment chart. Between 2008 and 2009, Estonia went from a 4% unemployment rate to a 19% unemployment rate. At the time, this was the highest unemployment rate in all of Europe, even higher than Greece and Spain. However, in just 2 years, they cut this figure in half. And now they have an admirable 6% unemployment rate. And the same goes for their salaries. Today, a person working in Tallinn is likely to be making more money than most people in southern Europe. In summary, Estonia is a model for other countries to follow. And now we're going to have a look at the key aspects of this country which did make it quite so successful.
Digital administration.
Estonia pioneered the idea of creating a digital ID card. Now many other countries have been copying this model, but it's not something that has ever been as successful as it was in Estonia. The reason that it is so successful in Estonia is because this ID card is actually useful. For instance, during the elections, any Estonian citizen can take this ID card, go to any computer, and vote electronically from wherever they are. There is no need for any sort of registration, and this is incredibly useful if you are on holiday during an election or if you are someone who lives abroad. Every expat knows the hassle of voting while abroad, having to go to the embassy and cast a ballot. It's all a big headache. Further, in addition to all of this hassle, there have been cases where votes from abroad have simply been lost. Further, in Estonia, you can use this ID card to do any sort of government business, and that includes paying your taxes. And forget about all of those long forms that other tax authorities make you fill out. In Estonia, you can do everything from your mobile phone in a matter of minutes. In fact, the government has access to the banks, so they can simply find your income. This happens in every other country, including the US. The only difference is that in Estonia, they think it's stupid to ask the same question twice. So you simply go over your citizen profile, confirm that everything's correct, and pay your taxes, just like that. But hold on for 1 minute, because the best is yet to come. Imagine that an unscrupulous government employee wants to spy on your personal data. Well then, when that happens, you will get a notification on your government profile. You can even see exactly who that government employee is who is looking at your data, and then, if you want, you can ask them why they are doing it. This means that Estonia in this regard has way more transparency than any other democracy. But if you still think this is not enough, here's the part that really puts Estonia over the top.
Estonian e-residency.
We've all heard about those big companies that place their fiscal headquarters in places like Panama or Luxembourg. However, this kind of tax structure is almost impossible for a freelancer or an SME.
I live in Luxembourg, and if you want to start a company in Luxembourg, you have to start by going to the notary. And to go to the notary, it takes you 3 weeks to get an appointment. And then you have to pay a lot of money, and there's an awful lot of bureaucracy and everything like that.
Well, in Estonia, they realized that they needed new citizens. As I said, the country faces a demographic crisis, and well, their weather sucks. That is why in 2014 they decided to offer their cutting-edge infrastructure to the whole world, no matter where you come from. And so you might now wonder, why is this quite so useful? Now, of course, this is not the same as an actual citizenship, and you can't use the residency as a passport. But it is a digital identity issued by a European government. And this certainly helps if you want to make international transactions or open a bank account in Estonia. This might be particularly useful if you are watching this video from places like the Ukraine or, well, Venezuela. The virtual card also makes it very easy for you to establish a company in Estonia, and you can do that without having to move there or do a lot of complicated paperwork. Okay, well, now I hear you saying Estonia's got to be a fiscal haven, right? Well, actually no. Corporate tax is 20%, which is the same as Finland, for example. What Estonia really offers is two main things: simplicity and rule of law. Now, maybe you think that is too little to offer, but the reality is over 10,000 people have already signed up for this virtual residency. One of them is actually the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In other words, Estonia has invented a brand new concept, the concept of liquid citizenship. And now, here is our big question for you. Do you think other countries will follow the Estonian model? Do you think there is a time when everyone will want to embrace Estonian citizenship? You can leave your answer in the comment section below, and do not forget that we put out brand new videos every Monday and Thursday, and you should subscribe to this channel if you want to get those. There will be a logo on the screen now that you can click, also a button below the video. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up below, and as always, I'll see you next time.
I get home this afternoon, I'll get back to hotel this evening, I'm going to open a bank account, start my company, and become an active Estonian.